Talk about Sheen Murphy in a few moments' time, but Frankie Dettori on that point, on Stradivarius in the long distance cup, he of course vented his own spleen after the race because of what Dylan Browne McMonagle was doing on Baron Samedi. Now, did Frankie have a point or not?
No. We'll break this race down. It's three components to this race, I think. Hopefully we can show it in its entirety. The very first point is the first bend. Now, this is
okay, so who are we looking out for?
Look for the Mediterranean in purple, look for Stradivarius in black, and look for Baron Samedi, who is the mount of Dylan Browne McMonagle, in the cheek pieces. Ryan Moore gets 4 days for this, slightly overlooked, because had it been any longer, we would have ruled him out of the Breeders' Cup, I think. This is quite a bad piece of interference. Watch Berkshire Rocco in red. You can see that Ryan does change course. The course in green, Roberto Escobar, goes into Berkshire Rocco, and then through no fault of his own, when this happens, you see Ryan pulls it. He has a look, but as he comes across, watch Berkshire Rocco reaching the crown of the bend, onto Hamish, onto Baron Samedi, who bumps Stradivarius. Now, that particular piece was nothing to do with Dylan Browne McMonagle, but from Frankie's point of view, it's lost him that ability to track Trueshan quite as effectively as had obviously been his desired case. Now, not a great deal happens for this part of the race, but when you look at how jockeys ride, they all like, or the good ones, like to be masters of their own destiny. And that piece of interference has put Stradivarius into a position where it's now very difficult for Frankie Dettori to be the master of his own destiny. Because how does he improve? The Mediterranean settled into a rhythm. Trueshan's keen in 5th place, so they're clearly not going very fast. But how do you get out of that spot when you're running down to Swindley Bottom, 3 wide, but the pace is not picking up? And that is the dilemma that's partly been caused. So there are 2 further bits of interference to keep an eye out for. One is the one that obviously annoys Frankie Dettori, so I'll tee it up even though we're a little way away from it in the race. Baron Samedi is just ahead of Stradivarius. He is wobbling around, but it's because he constantly gets caught on the heels of Trueshan. Frankie's probably thinking, do I go left, do I go right? But I need to go somewhere because it's steadily run. When they climb up from Swindley Bottom, the horse in white and Stradivarius have a coming together, but also the next part of interference concerns Tash Khan and also the winner Trueshan.
Yeah.
Now watch the jockeys on each of the horses that are on the inside. All of them now are realising that for a staying race it's going to turn into a sprint. So you need to get a little bit closer. And what you can't afford to do is get hemmed in. So watch Frankie Dettori think, I need to move forward. Black colours outside. As he moves forward, Baron Samedi realises he's going to get pinned in, and that's the piece of interference that will have annoyed Frankie. Now move further forward with your eye line. Watch Tash Khan in light blue, and Trueshan. Hollie Doyle thinks, I've got to go forward. Tash Khan sees Hollie on the outside, and here we go.
Ben Robinson does exactly the same.
Ben Robinson does exactly the same thing. And the reason for that is they do not want to get penned in because of what happens now. You'd have swapped Baron Samedi and Stradivarius around. Baron Samedi wasn't good enough, but he was in a better spot. For Frankie Dettori, that incident at the first bend put him in a position where he could no longer affect the race. When he wanted to, the lad pulled out in front of him absolutely legitimately. And Joseph O'Brien has been fulsome in his support, as he should be. And I hope Frankie, who I didn't want to pillar at all regards Palace Pier apart from looking round, on reflection feels that was very unfair to lay the blame on one young rider who was actually doing the best for his horse and his own connections.
Of course, what Frankie couldn't see is what we've been able to see, which is a whole race view. So his view probably was that first bit of interference going into the first bend, and then when it's happened again, he thought, not him again.
Absolutely, exactly.
What's he trying to do?
And yet the first piece of interference, they were both victims of an interference further up. If anything, he could have a gripe with Ryan Moore for not going fast enough with the interference on the first bend, but that's rather different. At the end of the day, Stradivarius had to do a lot of running to get there. I don't think either of them quite ran up to their best, but Trueshan is the more solid stayer this year.
Of course, owners of Trueshan, people who back Trueshan, Hollie Doyle will be looking in if they're watching thinking, well, hang on a minute, you just talked about a 2-mile race and not mentioned me. And that's perfectly reasonable because he's a terrific horse. And over the last year and a half, the balance of his form has just been a pound or two higher than that of Stradivarius. He was rank keen, Trueshan, almost like a horse who'd had enough for the season and gone over the top, I thought.
And that was Alan's main concern going into the race. And yes, absolutely, the point of talking about the analysis to explain the Frankie comments, certainly not to take anything away from the winner, who has been the best stayer. The second horse adds all sorts of interpretations as to how you rate it. Tashkent clearly has run a career best, having been beaten in a couple of marks of 93 in the last 2 runs. So I do think there's a legitimate explaints that there maybe those 2 horses didn't run up to their best. But again, Hollie was seen to good effect tactically, and Trueshan's just proved the better horse, particularly when they had that little bit of rain. I've never necessarily believed the rain for Stradivarius. I still remember that devastating burst that left Naef Road behind in that Gold Cup on very heavy ground. I just genuinely feel he hasn't been such a good horse this year, and that's not to detract for anything. He's still a good horse, but he was a very good horse.
Yeah, and who knows now what the future holds for Stradivarius.